Hi, welcome back. It's That Political Dude, and today we'll talk about South Africa. How this nation, which ended its decades-long apartheid, was on the right path to lead the African continent in terms of development and innovation, descended into a dystopian calamity on the verge of becoming a pariah state. This is the story of South Africa. South Africa was colonized by the Dutch and was known as the Cape Colony, or the Cape Colony. It was captured by Dutch navigator and colonial administrator Jan van Riebeeck, the Dutch East India Company in 1652, and remained Dutch until the British invaded the Cape Colony and the Dutch finally ceded the territory to the British in 1814 at the Convention of London. During its colonial times, African natives were displaced, and many Dutch and French Huguenot settlers arrived at the land looking for opportunities. The Europeans also brought Malays and Indians to live in South Africa. South Africa became the British Cape Colony and was constantly at war with the Boer secessionists, who are Dutch farmers and workers and do not approve of the British rule. South Africa further received more immigrants thanks to the discovery of diamonds. To cut the history short, the Union of South Africa was formed, which was governed by Afrikaners, who are of Dutch descent, and they spoke Afrikaans, which is an evolved version of Dutch that was adopted by the Boer farmers and workers as well as many locals. But the Afrikaners, who are still the minority of the nation, founded the apartheid, also known as the apartheid, which was a form of racial discrimination and segregation where the white elites benefited the most. Many black South Africans were also evicted from their ancestral home and displaced. The nation received much backlash around the world with worldwide protests, embargoes and sanctions, and most notably due to the overflying bans from neighboring African countries who opposed this oppressive regime. The national airline, South African Airways, was forced to fly some interesting routes to avoid African airspace. Frederick William de Klerk, the last state president of the Union of South Africa, dismantled the apartheid. He freed anti-apartheid activists, and he publicly apologized for apartheid's harm and effects, and hosted the first free election where Nelson Mandela, a Xhosa anti-apartheid activist who went on hunger strikes when he was imprisoned, and his party, the African National Congress, was elected the first president of the Republic of South Africa. At this point, it seemed South Africa's future could only go up, but soon it went to hell. The African National Congress, Mandela's party, which would have propelled South Africa, caused its downfall. They came to dominate in every election and continue to consolidate their power. Their party members are becoming more and more corrupt, and Mandela must be spinning in his grave. If you live in South Africa, you must know about the load shedding. Basically, periodic mandatory blackouts have been enforced by the South African government due to a shortage of electricity, and it is only getting worse. The nation has been suffering from a catastrophic energy crisis from 2007 onwards, and it was caused by mismanagement and corruption in Eskom, the public utility company run by the government. The ANC chronically underinvest in expanding and upgrading Eskom's power stations. Aside from the ANC, power plants in South Africa are also affected by thefts and vandals who sabotage the electricity grid, further adding fuel to the fire. If you think this is bad, unfortunately the effect of load shedding are worse. According to The Conversation, power cuts in South Africa have reduced the 2021 GDP growth by 3 percentage points and cost the country 350,000 potential jobs. The estimated unemployment rate in South Africa is between 30 to 40%, which is crazy high. Unemployed poor people in South Africa are the most likely to commit crimes, and the murder rate is also very high in the country at 45 per 100,000 people, compared to the 1 to 2 per 100,000 people in the Eurozone. It is very likely for you to be mugged, kidnapped, or even killed in South Africa, and their police force is often under-equipped to deal with the rising crime. The ANC did little to mitigate the effect of apartheid. Apartheid-era slums are still present, and most major cities in South Africa are still divided and segregated, with the extremely wealthy living in their own bubble and the extremely poor living in another world. The wealth divide certainly does not help with the crime rate. What is crazy about this country, where everyone thought it would have been a first world nation 15 years ago, is that a shocking 21 million people, or around 35% of its population, are still lacking in clean and safe sanitation facilities. Unfortunately, South Africa also suffers from an AIDS epidemic, which also hinders the productivity of its people, and the country bears a high social cost. The then President Thabo Mbeki was a huge denier of the epidemic at its peak in the early 2000s, and he denied that the HIV virus can cause AIDS. Unfortunately, AIDS awareness remains low in South Africa today, and currently nearly 13% of all population in South Africa is infected with HIV, and AIDS is responsible for a quarter of all deaths in South Africa. South Africa's chronic problem right now is with its government. The nation has slumped back into decline with a lack of investment into proper infrastructure, government services, and a lack of efforts to alleviate poverty and generate economic development and future wealth. The country needs reforms, and it needs it fast. Whilst it is slowly descending into a pariah state, hopefully my video can reach more people and educate them on the issue in the nation. Subscribe, stay alert, and I'll catch you in the next one.